I'm going to basically talk about my own personal experience of the algal bloom, not in any way suggesting that I'm exceptional, far from it, but because it's so typical of what so many others have experienced, although of course for some it's many times worse. Oh! How can I be hot when you're not there? Yeah, it just, yeah. Thank you. I've lived in Henley since 1987, for 28 years on the Esplanade between Joe's Kiosk and the Life Saving Club, and since 2015 closer to Henley Oval. Despite many huge winter storms where foam breached the car park and half covered the lawn in Henley Square, I've never previously had a respiratory reaction. My first experience of a respiratory reaction was back on Saturday, March the 22nd, a few days after Anthony Rolland had first reported surfers becoming ill after contact with the water at Waipinga. And here I should note that we live at Waipinga 40 to 50% of the time. So I've copped it on both sides. Okay, next slide. It was a fine morning, but the view from our house inland from Waipinga was hazy. The area from Kyneton to Galway had a light layer of sea haze, as it often does. I headed down to the Victor Markets, which are held about 150 metres from the beach. As soon as I got out of the car that morning, I was hit with a significant coughing attack, which turned into a full-blown unseasonal asthma attack. It cleared gradually across the afternoon, but I rapidly learned not to go to the beach on a hazy day. During the last week of June and first weeks of July, when the die-off first appeared on metropolitan beaches, I went down to Grange numerous occasions to photograph the range of dead species to upload to iNaturalist and to witness this profound and horrendous metamorphosis of my beloved coast. It was like an evil fascination, like it was really distressing, but I couldn't not go and witness it, and I think a lot of other people felt that too. Several times I came back and had to lie down clutching a hot pack to my chest due to a deep pain that I felt like I'd experienced a physical assault. It was both a grief and a shock reaction. It was visceral. It felt apocalyptic. I felt guilt and horror and a profound sense of loss. Next one. One of the core pillars of my well-being, my relationship to the sea that's been important to me since I was first born, had been overturned. The sense of loss I experienced is often called solastalgia. Next one. The term was created to express the deep grief and discomfort people feel when they experience negative emotional, environmental events and changes to their home environment. I mean, people can say, oh, academic terms, you know, but sometimes it's handy to have something that tries to capture more precisely the experiences that we're going through. This bloom has been more than discomforting. It's been profoundly confronting, challenging certainties and assumptions about our futures. The grief is for individual creatures and whole species in some instances. The huge system of oceans that are critical to the health of the world, for ourselves and those with whom, both human and canine, we love sharing the sea. And for our children and grandchildren, how can we be leaving them an environment, an inheritance of toxic oceans? This question has been asked by thousands. While walking on metropolitan beaches, everywhere you'd see people in tears or standing stock still, looking at these creatures that have washed up, some of whom they'd never seen or heard of before. They were in shock and confusion and distress. In my submission to the Senate inquiry, I described these responses as a visceral despair that gnaws away at our guts and revisits us in the disturbed dreams night after night. Another way of looking at these emotions is covered by the Welsh term hiraeth. I think I've got that wrong. This refers to a particular kind of deep homesickness or grief for a place that is altered beyond return, or one that has been destroyed and is now unattainable. And I think that's what we have all feared and still continue to fear, that this summer and onwards, There is no beach to go to when it's endless days of 40 degrees in a row. There's nowhere to go that 6 o'clock time in the morning when that moment of calm, stillness and coolness is there. And you can exercise. You can exercise the dog. You can go with your friends. Just have a chill out moment before facing the onslaught of global warming heat. Of course, I hope our seas do recover and that people are able again to snorkel, dive, surf, swim, canoe, fish and walk without ill effects. That the ecosystem returns to balance and that solutions such as the restoration of oyster reefs proliferate and are successful. At the same time as feeling this emotional grief, I also got hit with very bad asthmatic symptoms from being on the beach and photographing the sea creatures. I was taking 4 kinds of medication, which I've never experienced anything like that before, and ended up taking a course of oral steroids to manage the severe inflammation of my respiratory tract. This meant I had to postpone a scheduled surgery. But there was nowhere to report this. I did write to both the Federal Health Minister, Mark Butler, who's also my local member, and to State Minister Chris Picton, asking for them to set up and fund a system for recording the respiratory cases presenting to GPs and hospitals. This was both to document what was currently being experienced and to have a comparison for the future. I received no reply from Minister Butler other than a receipt of correspondence and a form letter from Minister Picton outlining the government's overall response to the algal bloom. So the asthma meant I could no longer walk regularly on the beach, even wearing a mask, which made me feel unanchored and profoundly powerless and exacerbated my emotional distress. I wrote letters, as I said, attended community, academic and online forums in Middleton, Seacliff, Port Adelaide, Victor Harbour, University of South Australia and West Lakes. I wrote submissions, I participated in some of the multiple Facebook groups, avoiding the worst conspiracy hotspots. I looked at other people's contributions with interest and heard the Red Cross's presentation to the Senate inquiry. They are highly experienced at engaging with communities during and after natural disasters, and they liken the algal bloom not to a bushfire, which has high impact, but many people move on from relatively quickly, but more like a prolonged and severe drought, which leaves serious trauma and mental health issues in its toil. They warned of potential impact on individuals and families should the blooms persist across summer. Talking to people face to face and monitoring online discussions, I see people documenting their distress, anxiety and grief and sense of powerlessness and guilt. But also increasingly some have been suggesting ways to act constructively to mitigate even a little this powerlessness and guilt, grief. There are some online resources that people have produced. There are some online resources that people have produced, and there are a couple of people here who have been involved in that may have a chance to talk to them later. And there's mutual support also being offered. There have been beach vigils and vigils at Parliament House, artists have held exhibitions and festivals, and there are more to come. There is a sense of deep frustration that the government firstly failed to act or respond appropriately when it was merely a South Coast and Kangaroo Island issue, and secondly that in responding have minimised or denied the seriousness of the physical health impacts and largely ignored the psychosocial impacts. One of the more distressing pieces of evidence I heard was from the Ngarrindjeri people telling the Senate inquiry that the government had not sought to liaise or consult with them despite their many thousands of years' experience of managing water and marine resources, and that this felt both insulting and disrespectful. They are clearly an impacted community, but were only included in the broader consultation due to their economic relationship with Kathie Company, the pippi harvesting company based in the Coorong. Kathie Company continues 19,000 years of pippi harvesting and provides important, culturally relevant jobs to young Indigenous people. The loss of pippi harvesting has had a devastating effect, and it's the first time that important cultural practices based around pippi harvesting and consumption can no longer be practiced. Ngarrindjeri people are traditionally custodians of the land and sea and have an intimate relationship with sea creatures that are their ancestral beings. Given this enduring and deeply significant relationship, the mass deaths of sea life has produced a profound sense of loss and guilt. It is their role to protect their relatives, and they have failed. I thought my angst was bad, but it's not an iota of the grief that the Indigenous people of the South Coast and York Peninsula are experiencing. We've been delivered a shocking warning. We have to act urgently and demand that our governments act both at a macro level to dramatically reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and at a local level to protect the environment. We have to invest more resources into public health and to collate the impact upon people's physical and psychosocial health, even if we can prevent an algal bloom recurring here, there will be other disasters, and we must all learn from this one.